Ryan Webb, welcome to the Leading Saints podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to talk to you.
Yeah. Now you are in North Carolina and you're an institute director out there for North Carolina State. Did I get those details right?
That's right. Yeah, we've been out here for about 8 years.
Nice. So what's your path been in church education that landed you there?
Yeah, so went to Utah State for my undergrad and got hired by the church and started teaching seminary in Utah County. And then they asked us to move to Colorado Springs, where we were for 5 years and got to teach Institute of the Air Force Academy, along with a few other assignments. And then we thought we'd live there forever. And they came calling and said, hey, there's a good opportunity out in North Carolina for you if you're willing to take it. So we did and have just loved it. We've lived here for 8 years and could not be happier.
Awesome. And now how many full-time staff are you working with or full-time faculty?
There's 4 guys in North Carolina, but I work with 19 stake presidents and coordinate all things seminaries and institutes, and just you're not really on a faculty, so to speak.
Gotcha.
Somebody who's over us who lives in Atlanta, but
yeah. So if somebody's going to North Carolina State and they want to take Institute, you're going to be their teacher. Is that way it works?
We've got some volunteers who help, but pretty much, yeah, that's right.
Gotcha. And then you're recording this, obviously a church building, and so you hold your classes in like a traditional church building, or?
So we actually have an institute at NC State. There's also an institute at UNC Chapel Hill, which are pretty close to each other, and then Duke University has a decent population of LDS kids, and we have a class there. But it's on campus, just in one of the buildings on campus.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Now, I love asking this question to maybe therapists or others, sort of just cold, with no anticipation of this question. But I'm just curious, today teaching this rising generation, the young single adults or young adults, what are you seeing? What are you observing? I mean, what would you report back in just a few minutes?
Yeah, that's a great question. As soon as you ask that, I just feel very optimistic. We have amazing young adults. The young adults I would get to work with are very intelligent. They think through things, but most of the time with a very faithful lens. They want to be disciples of Jesus Christ. I think sometimes people think they come across as asking too many questions, but I think it's the questions they ask actually deepen their faith. I think that we ought to be super excited about the future with the faithful young adults that are all around.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Now you're also serving as a bishop. How long have you been in that role?
It'll be 3 years this fall.
Oh, great. And was this your first go at bishop, I assume?
Yeah, we've got a pretty good sized ward. I think we have 86 youth currently in the ward. It's a fun, big ward.
And how would you describe the other characteristics of your ward, whether either geographics or the makeup or anything like that?
Yeah, so we live about 20 minutes from the Raleigh Temple. So we have a pretty high population of LDS folks around here. And our geographics is probably 15 minutes from one side of the ward to the other in the car. High activity level. We get about 250 people to sacrament meeting each Sunday. We have 20 active priests currently. I think sometimes we thought, we're moving to North Carolina. The church is going to be, somewhat small, but not where we live. It's pretty strong. In fact, it's the strongest ward we've ever been in as far as numbers go and activity. So
that's encouraging to hear. So just take me back maybe to that first year, the first 6 months, just getting going in this calling with, I know from those that recommended I speak to you. I mean, you have some pretty unique approaches and things, but where did that begin, or how did you walk into this really thinking dynamically like that?
Oh, I don't know. It's all a blur those first 6 months. I think realizing, first off, our former bishop was just amazing. So I picked his brain a lot and just said, tell me what you think about this. And he still is accessible to me, which is super, super fun. But also recognizing that I've been blessed with certain gifts and talents. And so for this stage of my life, for this season, while I have this calling, what does Heavenly Father want me to do with my gifts and talents? And so I think at first I was a little hesitant to I'm a church education employee. I'm a full-time professional teacher. I didn't want to be talking too much, even though I like to do that. I like to teach. I like to speak even. And I was a bit hesitant at first. Like, I don't want to give them too much of me. But I think when I settled in of just, hey, I'm called at this time for a reason, and I'm going to use the gifts and talents that I have to bless people. And for better or for worse, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've had a significant focus on, I mean, maybe you describe it differently, but as far as sacrament meeting, how you approach sacrament meeting that you've tried to do, I mean, how would you describe that approach or what are you trying to accomplish through sacrament meeting?
Yeah, so this all started when, as a bishopric, we thought, okay, what can we actually do that will impact people? We spend so much time doing lots of things. Are there a few things that we could do really well that could actually impact our congregation, the people who come to church? And one of the first things that came to our mind was sacrament. We control what happens in sacrament meeting each Sunday. We spend time every bishopric meeting talking about sacrament meeting. We plan these out. We can impact what happens there. And so as we started talking about that, we just had a few ideas and meetings and started thinking through what we could do to change or at least make a greater impact in sacrament meeting service.
Yeah, and I appreciate how you frame that because as I think about it, I mean, you think of obviously the bishopric is often framed that they have an influence on just the word in general, right? They're helping all the different organizations and maybe the activities, but I mean, for as far as the most bang for your buck, I mean, sacrament meeting that's your meeting, right? It's never anywhere else unless you delegate it somewhere else, or you're picking the speakers, you're really guiding that, and so for a bishopric to have a lot of influence, they should start with the sacrament meeting.
It seemed like an easy place to start.
Yeah.
And knowing that, as a bishop, I'm going to decide who speaks. We're going to decide what happens during those minutes together. Let's see what we can do to have a greater impact. So,
Yeah. So what did this look like early on as you were trying to orchestrate this?
yeah. So the first thing that came to our minds was, okay, we are constantly inviting friends to church. What do we want? If I'm bringing my neighbor to church, what do we want them to experience when they come? And so it started actually with what happens when they walk through the doors of our buildings, and would they feel welcomed? Is there something that we need to do as a bishopric to make sure when people walk through these doors, they feel welcomed? So we had this idea to go to the young women's president and say, hey, do you think there's anything our young women could do to impact the culture of sacrament meeting as far as even before it begins? And kind of just sent her off. And she came back with some beautiful ideas, and it's changed a bit over time, but it's basically to right now is all of our young women are the greeters in our building on Sundays. They have a whole system in place. We had a kickoff meeting for them to kind of introduce the idea. I had some guests come and join, and our young women are now greeting people as they come through the doors of the building every Sunday. And that's just really changed the overall feeling as people come to sacrament meetings. That was where we started.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, especially, and maybe, just me being raised and living in a Utah context, very saturated. We don't get a lot of people walking in, or I don't know, maybe that's a whole other podcast. But the point being is that sometimes we don't structure our meeting expecting the visitor to walk in, right? And so but if we took that step, maybe more visitors would walk in, or more people would be inspired to invite others to bring to church. So I love that approach, and makes sense, especially in North Carolina where you're not the dominant religion in the area, right?
Yeah, we've had the chance to visit many other churches of friends, and we have pastors in our neighborhood who have invited us. We've gone as a family, and we felt so welcomed. So, like, what a great place to be. And we thought, what are we doing in our church to make people feel that way? And does as a member, am I hesitant to invite my friend if I'm worried that they're not going to be greeted well, or what have they experienced in other settings where they've gone? Is there some things we could do to better match up so they feel like, oh, this is a great place to be even before the
Yeah.
meeting begins?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Uh, I'm curious. So you said you went to your young women's president and kind of said, what would you suggest we do? Right. And I love that dynamic. I want to dig in more to this. just as far as involving your ward council in this or specific members? Like, was that discussion or that invitation made within the context of like a ward council meeting, or was it a personal invite and in the hallway or in a one-to-one meeting? Or
The idea came in bishopric meeting. We then went to the young women's president one-on-one and said, hey, we think the young women would be really good at this. Could you think through what it would look like? And then
okay,
as she brought back information, we presented it in ward council and they kind of refined it a little bit. And
yeah.
then we moved forward.
Yeah. So I love this. I think there's a principle here of just sort of putting out a general invitation. Like, this is generally what we're thinking. But if you were in charge of that component, or, young men, young women, the elders quorum, whomever, what would it look like? Right. And then that stimulates revelation that they bring back.
And she was way better at it than we were. It came out great. So
That's awesome. So anything else you would, as far as the details of how the young women do that, or things they do, how they prepare when they show up, any details like that?
yeah, we had a kickoff meeting because we wanted the young women to feel like it was a big deal, because it is a big deal. They so we had a planned meeting where they had assigned converts to church in our ward come tell them about their first experience coming to church. We had a member of the stake presidency who was invited to come also share his thoughts about what we were trying to do, just to kind of solidify to the young women this is a big thing. And it was a miracle, actually. The mission president came to church that Sunday that we were planning on doing it, and I said, hey, here's what we're doing at church, you want to come? And so he came in and shared his
Nice.
testimony about what the young women. And so I think they had immediately bought into, we play a big role in sacrament. Not just do the young men play a big role in what happens on Sundays, we do too as young women. And
Oh,
so they
interesting.
sign up. They have a little system where they sign up. I think there's 6 of them at a time, and they have different stations and different things, and they stay out till after, right before the sacrament actually begins, the sacramental part of sacrament meeting, and then they come in and sit by their families. But I thank them every Sunday. I go shake their hands, tell them thank you for being out here, and we ask them to come early, just like we do our young men, to prepare. So it's been a neat thing.
Yeah, I love this approach of exposing them to real life stories and people who are impacted, long ago maybe, or prior to showing up as a visitor, and getting that perspective, and that really gives you something to work with that stimulates further revelation.
Yep. Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
great.
that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, any other component that you've tried, or as far as improving the sacramenting experience?
So that's just all before sacrament begins. The next step is, what do we want to actually do in sacrament meeting? The first thing we decided was we wanted to get rid of the traditional, list that we had. We had this list of every member in the ward, and you could see the last time they spoke, and then we would just go through and say, okay, whose turn is it to speak? And so that was the first thing we decided. Let's get rid of that idea, and let's just try to make worshipful, meaningful, edifying sacrament meetings and not worry about those logistics. So we had a bishopric meeting where we had this whiteboard in the office, and we just said, imagine nothing is off the table and we could do whatever we wanted for sacrament. What could we come up with? Let's just brainstorm. We just threw a bunch of stuff on the whiteboard. In fact, I was looking at today, I still have the screenshot of that whiteboard. And we just had some ideas that we'll probably never ever do, and some ideas that we have done. And the whole principle of just how can we make sacrament meeting edifying and worshipful. That was kind of a switch to think we want to worship, and what does that mean? What does that feel like? What does that look like in sacrament? And so we've tried some things, and some have gone better than others. And but there's been a neat excitement in sacrament. I don't know exactly how to describe it. I've heard a few members say, like, I'm excited to come and see what you guys are going to do next. Like, I'm excited to be here on Sunday because I know it's not going to be the same thing that we're
Yeah,
accustomed to. So that's been
yeah.
fun.
Now, I'm sure you're not too much of a renegade. I mean,
No.
you're not trying to reinvent the church, or you do open the handbook every once in a while. So, what did that dynamic look like? Because I know some leaders are listening, being like, "Well, I don't know. Does the handbook say you can do that?" Yeah. So I mean, how did you involve? How did that process go?
Yeah, and for sure, we don't want to go against the handbook or do anything different, but we also want to think outside the box and know that there's revelation available to us. So the first thing we said is, well, we know music is powerful. Music brings the spirit in a unique way, and why can't we do that more often? And so we immediately said, what if we had a musical number every single Sunday at church? And at first we were like, that seems crazy. But we contacted our music coordinator and said, hey, what do you think if we tried to have a musical number? And she said, let's try it. And so we've been pretty consistent for about 9 months of every week a musical number of some sort. Have had to get creative of how to make that happen, but that's been one big change that's definitely within the bounds of the handbook. And it was a good place for us to start.
Yeah. And I want to underscore this approach that is so, again, it really gets the wheels turning as far as inviting everybody to imagine we have a clean slate. Like there's no prior tradition or
Yeah.
expectation. What would it look like if we were really to create a dynamic experience, in sacrament meeting? And you can plug in, primary program. You can plug in the young men camp. You can, what all these different activities we do to kind of wash away the tradition, because sometimes we're bound by that tradition, feeling like, well, it sort of worked last time, or, not too many people are complaining. So let's just do that. Right. Or improve that just maybe 5%, and go from there. But there really is a power of saying, what if we started completely over from scratch? Right.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough as far as the role that the Holy Ghost has played for us in teaching us as a bishopric. I love that principle of we are entitled to revelation as a bishopric. God wants the people who come to our ward on Sundays to be edified and strengthened. And if we're the ones who are going to decide what happens, we need him to tell us, to instruct us on how to help that be edifying. And that clean slate that you've talked about has really been important.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So music now is, you're still doing the every week there's a musical number.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll give you a few ideas of things that have happened. Of course, we know the music leader knows of people who have musical talents within the ward and has definitely utilized them. But we've also made simple assignments like to our young men's. The whole young men's is going to sing in 3 weeks, and they spend some time on youth night preparing for that. We've done that with the Relief Society, the Elders Quorum, our young women, included our primary. So right there, you've got 4 or 5 musical numbers just from your auxiliaries that you can pull from. And then we've sent out signups for musical numbers through people. We've reached out to other churches to bring in choirs from other churches,
Oh, wow.
even
Cool.
because we thought, hey, that's a cool way to get some non-members into our congregation, is
Yeah.
invite their choir to come sing.
And there's probably no shortage of choirs in North Carolina,
Yeah.
right?
So that's been another way. But we've invited people who were a little shy about their musical talents, but had heard they've had them to do it, and it's been a real cool thing. So everybody's
Wow,
loved that.
that's awesome. And then I mean, the typical thing is, after sacrament, you have this one speaker, and then you have you break it up with a musical number in between the speakers. Is that generally how you do it, or how have you mixed it up that way?
Yeah, and again, we're trying to maybe think outside the box a little bit. So rarely do we have traditional 10-minute speaker and then a musical number and then another speaker. That just hasn't happened much lately. In fact, it's kind of funny. That happens mostly only when it's High Council Sunday, when we know that somebody from the stake is coming in to speak and they're going to do that traditional format. But one of the principles that we've kind of come up with, that shorter talks are better most of the time, unless it's maybe a really trained person or somebody who's got a particular topic they're passionate about. So that's been kind of one of our guiding things moving through this, is that we keep things kind of short. And so we would tend to have more than 2 or 3 speakers if we're doing some short stuff. And I can give you a couple examples of that if you want. But
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
one of the ideas that I tried to list all the sacraments we've done over the last 9 months or so. One of the ideas we had was, what if we had a language meeting where we had people who speak different languages come up and share their testimony in that tongue that they speak. So we just started looking at the languages that people speak from missions. And we had, on this particular Sunday, 14 different languages where people shared their testimony in that language. Even the opening and closing prayer was done in a different language. And we told them, you got 90 seconds to share your testimony in that language. Please don't stand up and say, oh, I haven't spoken this language in 20 years. No, just jump right into it. Tell us what language you're speaking, and then just jump right into it. And it was powerful to hear the gospel taught in those different languages. That was super fun.
Wow. So you just lined them up, right? So, and most of the time, I mean, unless you spoke that language, it was just one language after the other that you didn't understand. But just knowing that they were testifying, and knowing probably most of them that they learned this language in the context of preaching the gospel was added to that power.
Yeah, we had one particular member who was really nervous about it, and he's kind of been semi-active, I would say, and it just rekindled a fire in him from his mission. To be able to think, man, I used to testify of this all the time, and here I am in this tongue that I love, these people that I loved, and it was beautiful. So a lot of great comments from that one.
Any other examples of things you've done?
Yeah, I'll just start reading off a list, because I know you don't want me to go.
Because you got a list. I love it.
We've had an all music service where we only had music the whole time, and it was focused on worshiping. And there was a variety of musical numbers. We took the Living Christ and broke it up paragraph by paragraph with musical numbers in between each paragraph. So we just read from the Living Christ. We had a narrator who kind of did that, and then had musical numbers in between. We've done a young men's only sacrament meeting where they prepared it all. Just like we said, primary takes one sacrament meeting a year. Why can't we have our young men take a sacrament?
Yeah.
So they prepared the whole sacrament meeting service. We've done that with young women as well. We did a Because of Him meeting. So the video Because of Him, the church message that's usually around Easter. We asked 6 different people to share their own Because of Him. And we actually shared that video at the start of sacrament meeting, and then had these 6 individuals share their own Because of Him experience. That was a really powerful Sunday. We did 4 Christmas programs in the month of December. So our idea here was, each time we invite we always say, invite your friends. The church puts out this thing about invite your neighbors to come worship with you on Christmas. And a lot of people out here have their own churches they go to on Christmas. So let's have our whole December be Christmas programs. And so we did 4 Christmas programs in December, really encouraging our members to invite their friends to come experience a Christmas service at a church. So we did 4 Easter programs this year with the same kind of idea.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. And then there's that option, right? Of like, you invite your neighbor and be like, oh, I can't come that week. Well, how about the next week?
That's right. We're having multiple Christmas programs this year.
Nice.
And they were all pretty, in the sense, like, well thought out, right? You usually really think through your Christmas program, the musical numbers, and we did that with all 4 of them. So it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Any others?
Oh, this was one we did recently. About 3 weeks before this meeting, I stood up and said, as you know, we've been trying to mix things up with sacrament meetings. So here is something we're going to do 3 weeks from now. We would like the whole congregation to prepare a talk. And then we're
Oh,
going to randomly call on people from the congregation to come share what they prepared. There was a bit of a gasp from the ward when we said this, but the topic was simple. It's why I believe. You've got 90 seconds to share written down why you believe. And we asked, please don't come up and try to wing that. Please write down why you believe. We
in 90
then
seconds.
90 seconds.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
we then the next week announced it again. And what we did on the day of it was, instead of calling people up randomly, we actually just opened it up and said, anybody who wants to share their why I believe, please come up here. And it filled up front. So there was a line to have everybody share, from little children to youth to our adults. And that was maybe even more helpful than the actual experience, was the fact that we had families at home writing these out, children asking their parents if they had written their why I believe, children sharing with their parents their why I believe. And afterwards, as a bishopric, we thought, how cool is it that people were in their homes doing things that we asked them to do, like as
Yeah.
part of this sacrament meeting service. So
Did you notice like a decrease in attendance that day at all?
we
Or
were worried about that. But no, we didn't. In fact,
wow.
I was nervous. I told the ward council, we meet every week as a ward council. I told the ward council, it was before church, if no one gets up, at least everyone in this room has to get up to share their why I
Yeah.
believe. But it wasn't a problem at all. So it was fun.
Wow, I love that. Love that. And here's the thing is, and maybe some people are listening to this and they have like this trauma response to that moment, like in state conference when they were called up to share their testimony, right? And generally speaking, I would really discourage any leader from doing that type of thing where you're like, oh, why don't we invite a few people up? Like, but yours is so different because you're preparing them, right? You gave them a heads up. You made it very simple, 90 seconds. Here's the topic. Go home and prepare it. And again, to me, it's not necessarily bad that people invite people up, out of nowhere. It's that they're unprepared. It's very an unkind thing to do at times. But when you prepare them and then you even, switch it up.
Yeah, I had even made a video that week, recording myself, like talking to the ward about this upcoming sacrament, and to
Mhm.
not be nervous. We're not going to call anybody up. Um,
Oh, okay.
and so we really tried to prepare them, like you said, instead of just, hey,
Yeah.
come on up here. So that's
Yeah.
been good. We're
Love
going to do
that.
that. We're going to do that again with titles of Christ. So
Oh,
we'll
cool.
do that again, where we say, prepare a talk about your favorite title of Jesus Christ and what it means to you, and
Yeah.
do it again.
Awesome. Have you gotten any, like, being so creative and with these different approaches, have you gotten any blowback from members of your ward or any negative feedback or?
There was one member who didn't love the language meeting because they're like,
Oh, okay.
I couldn't understand anything that was going on. And
Yeah.
for me, it was more of the experience of, I got up at the end of this and shared a scripture about the gospel being preached to all nations, tongues, and people, and tried to make it feel like, look, this is a beautiful, amazing global faith that we're a part of. But that didn't resonate, I
Yeah.
guess, with him. So.
Yeah. And then in the last few years, at least from my perspective here in Utah, there's been more of an emphasis on having a focus on Christ in sacrament meeting, especially. And just through these examples, that seems to be an obvious thing. Is there anything you would add to that as far as your approach of keeping Christ as the focus of the meeting?
Yeah, definitely a big focus for us is to have the Christ-centered um, sacrament services. We try to really emphasize the sacrament itself as the most important part of our meeting. And then every time we prompt someone with something, Christ is the center of all of our prompts.
Yeah.
Um, a few other things that just came to my mind as you said that, we've asked people to sign up if they would like to speak on any topic that they want to. And so we sent out a sign up and say, hey, if you want to speak, we had a little couple of paragraphs of instructions, but they were all on somehow connected with how Jesus Christ has strengthened them. Those have honestly been some of the best traditional sacrament meeting talks, when they have shared something they've been thinking about, they've been passionate
Yeah.
about, instead of just, hey, here's the topic. We're going to give you exactly what you're going to say. And here's the amount of time. We've said to them, what's been on your heart? What's been on your mind that you, so one guy talked about the hymns in Sacrament. And honestly, I think it should be in the Leahone. It was such a good talk. Another guy
Wow.
said wanted to talk about prophets and how prophets have changed his family, and it's just we've got a list of 20 people, and that's now become, hey, what should we do 3 weeks from now? Oh, let's just go to that list of who said they want to speak.
Yeah. Nah, there's so much here that comes to mind. Like, just this is such an underrated principle, in my opinion, as far as leadership is actually giving people an opportunity to request, even outside of sacrament, even callings. Like, there's something powerful when you even ask people of their ward, like, how do you want to serve here? Are you love primary? Like, maybe we can find you a place there. Do you love working with youth? Maybe, right? And obviously, not everybody's going to get what they want, just the way it's structured, but I love this, even in sacrament meeting, of saying, do you, those who want to speak, like, raise your hand. Let's see it and let us know what you would speak about, because and there is power. I think, I wouldn't ever want to skip over the dynamic of having somebody who is quite a bit nervous and they don't do this often, and there's such a blessing in
Sure.
standing up there and doing your best and testifying, and everybody's rooting for you, and oh great, maybe it wasn't an awesome talk, but that's great, you had that opportunity. But generally speaking, in a more traditional way, when you say, hey, who wants to speak? And I think you're going to find that you have a better quality of message in sacrament meeting, because they actually want to stand there. They actually want to participate in that way. Right.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing when people use their agency in that way, and
Yeah.
um, and and I think it also is in some strange way training or helping people see, like, what are you passionate about? If you were to speak in sacrament, what would you choose to talk about? I've said this a few different times to our ward. We should always be working on something when it comes to like a gospel message. You if you're speaking this Sunday, Kurt, in sacrament meeting, you're spending some time thinking about that. You're preparing. You're looking at the scriptures a little differently. Imagine we did that every single week, where we're like, "Look, I'm going to prepare to deliver something to someone," and it enhances our own personal scholarship. So hopefully that message is also coming across.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And so I'm this random game in my mind. We're recording this first part of June, and a few weeks ago was Mother's Day. So what'd you do for Mother's Day?
Mother's Day, we used our ward council a lot because we wanted our sisters' input there. And so we had a lot of music. That was the idea. They wanted a lot of music on Mother's Day. I think we had 4 musical numbers on
Oh
Mother's
wow,
Day. And
cool.
then they we found something from Sister Do and some paragraphs from a talk that she gave, and then we had a sister who came up and read those paragraphs. So the ward council said, don't make a sister prepare, don't make her stress out on Mother's Day, but she'd be happy to get up and just read a few paragraphs from this talk. So we didn't have any commentary or insight. It was just straight out of Sister Do and music numbers.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, with roughly 52 Sundays in a year, I guess 50 if state conference, 48 with
Yeah.
general conference, right? I mean, it gets to a point that you can't do anything too unique every week. And so, I mean, do you feel like there is a general cadence to your meetings, that sort of a default position that you come back to?
We're once a quarter. We're planning sacrament meetings, and then we actually spend time every ward council talking about sacrament, in some regard. So I don't think we've settled on a cadence yet of like, this is what we go back to. It's been about a year since we've really been trying to mix things up. Um, I mean, I can look and see what we've got going on the next 3 months, and we've got a lot of auxiliary led sacraments coming up in the summer. But yeah, I don't think we've really settled on here's our default.
Yeah. So there's going to be maybe a sacrament that is just completely handled by the elders, like they're picking the speakers and doing
That's
that,
right.
and
That's
obviously
right.
they're running it by you, and you're aware of what's going to be happening, but they're worrying about the details of it.
That's right. The next one upcoming is actually the 12 and 13-year-olds.
Oh, okay.
So it's the boys and the girls. They're going to have a youth night where they plan it together. And we really talk to our youth leaders, like, let them plan this. What do they want sacrament meeting to look like? And they're going to plan it and execute it. When we did our youth-led meeting, this was one of the first ones we did. I actually had the deacons quorum and teachers quorum president sit next to me on the stand when we did our youth-led meeting, and my counselors sat with their families. And we had them say the opening prayers and the closing prayers. And that's actually one thing that we've continued is we always have a youth or a primary child say one of the prayers in sacrament meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Awesome.
been awesome.
Yeah, really good. I'm curious. So it's more of the bishopric talks about it, but sacrament, but it's more of a ward council.
We definitely use our ward council a lot.
Yeah.
We've had many ward councils. In fact, this has also been really helpful. Ward councils where they've said, I wish the whole ward was in here right now. Like, this is so edifying to be able to have these ward council experiences. And so we've gone and said, okay, let's have ward council moments in Elders Quorum and Relief Society and include them in our meetings. Take this question to Elders Quorum today and bring it back next Sunday with you, what the Elders Quorum says about that. Or Relief Society does the same thing. Or if I have a message that I want to get out to Relief Society, then that's what the Relief Society president takes. Hey, in Ward Council today, the bishop asked us to read, for example, the new paragraph about the garment. And so they did that last Sunday. We had a Ward Council discussion. They had that same discussion with the Relief Society to try to make our whole ward feel like they have a say and an impact on what's happening every Sunday.
Oh man, that's insightful. Love that. Really good. And so, and you're talking about this quarterly meeting. So is that every quarter you have one ward council meeting that's only focused on preparing sacrament?
So we usually just do that as a bishopric. So the bishopric gets together every quarter. We try to hammer out the next 3 months, and then we'll take those to the ward council with our ideas.
Gotcha. So that may be, hey, Elders Quorum, you've got this, these 3 weeks that we need you to approach, and we're going to do a youth thing on these days, right? So, and then they fill in the details from there, right?
Yeah, they fill in the best parts.
Man, so good. So good. Anything else that we're missing? Any ideas or thoughts or approaches or things that didn't work or lessons learned? Or
there's definitely been things that haven't worked. We've really tried to help our fast and testimony meetings be, simple, direct testimonies of Jesus. And, some days are better than others on that. And
yeah, we all get that. Yeah.
And when I say, 90 seconds why I believe, that doesn't mean that there wasn't somebody who spoke for 4 minutes or 5 minutes, just because we're not going to make them sit down after 90 seconds. But yeah, for the most part, I think there's this feeling of we want to come to church on Sunday and feel hope and strengthened by Jesus Christ. And we can do that. We can highly influence that experience. And I think there's just an eagerness from our members who want to be involved in it as well, with the little things like sign up to speak and calling people out of the congregation and having them prepare. Like, I feel like there's somewhat of this, we're doing this together, and that's been beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm curious, if you were to coach a brand new bishopric on how to have the best fast and testimony meeting, like what things do you do to lead to that result?
Oh, I feel like that's one of the things we got to work on. But
okay, all right.
There's material where you can get a quotes from prophets about what a pure testimony is. And then definitely the bishopric member who bears that first testimony has got to be an example of that. If you get up and say, we would invite the congregation to bear brief testimony centered on Jesus Christ, and then you go on for 10 minutes and tell 3 stories, it's less likely
so true.
happen, right? True. So just modeling that and emphasizing over and over the power of simple, pure testimony and encouraging it.
Yeah, really good. I just feel like just hearing from your experience in the ward, like this isn't like your idea or your thing. It's not the bishopric's thing. It's not only the ward council things, but you've really rallied the ward around sacrament meeting, knowing that all these other, extracurricular things are happening. People still go to second hour and Elders Quorum still got their things, or but this really is a rallying point for the ward to start. Like, everybody show up here first, and we're going to create something that'll impact you and will sort of overflow into these other experiences in the church and experiences at home, and really impacts the culture of the word in a positive way. Is that a good way to sum it up?
I think so. I hope so. I mean, if I'm going to sacrament meeting, what do you want to have happen while you're at sacrament meeting? And what do I want my children to experience at sacrament? If we're bringing our neighbor that we've been trying to get to church for the last 3 years, and here they come to sacrament, what do I want to be there? And it's not boring. Like I don't want to bring my neighbor to something that I don't feel like they're going to feel edified and strengthened by. And so with that premise, can we as a group, as a ward, figure out a way so that if someone walks through our doors, they will feel edified and strengthened in Jesus while they're with us? And the truth is, I've got 6 kids who are coming to church with me this Sunday, and I need them to feel those things that I just described that I want my neighbor to feel. And
Yeah.
so it's worth our thought to think through how we can impact our sacrament services.
Last question I have for you, as you reflect on your time as a bishop, as a leader in the church, how has being a leader helped you become a better follower of Jesus Christ?
Oh, that's a good question. I struggle often with feeling adequate. I look around our congregation often and think of so many people who could be doing this. And I'm just humbled by the opportunity to serve in this capacity. So how has serving in this capacity helped me be a better disciple of Jesus Christ? It's just made me recognize my desperate need for Jesus Christ. Like, I cannot do anything of myself, and with him, it can't go wrong. And so you take that extreme, by myself I can't do anything, and with him I can't go wrong, and it's just been humbling to be tied to him, to be bound to him in that way, because as a dad, as a bishop, as a husband, he wants these people around me to be edified and strengthened, and he's not gonna let that go amiss. So I'm just humbled and thankful to be part of this work, and I know it's his work.